On a sunny Sunday in June, a group of about 15 people sit in a circle of chairs in Leona Walden's lovely yard in Albion. The group is preparing to read Shakespeare's Richard III as they wend their way through the entire catalog of the bard's work. Mike Issel is the coordinator of this monthly event.
It started about 2.5 years ago, originally under the product of a workshop put on by the Mendocino Theater Company. And from that, the query that I postulated was, why can't we form a Shakespeare group here? Much along the lines of one that participated in Berkeley. The attendants at that developed, a special relationship with each other. And I wanted to kind of bring that to the community up here and see if I couldn't, share that among a wider audience of what I'm sure were people who might enjoy.
So in 2.5 years, have you worked your way through the repertoire, or where are you?
Shakespeare wrote 34 plays. So we start at the beginning of the comedies, tragedies, romances. The history plays we've done in chronological order, interspersed with comedies, so that there's relief, so to speak. We're about halfway through the entire repertoire, and what that does is gives everybody an opportunity to read the whole corpus.
And how are these roles chosen?
They're chosen generally by the readers themselves. What I've had to do is to introduce a ranking system so that you can have a first, second, and third choice. So those people, all who want to come in and read Richard, there's only one Richard, but there might be 5 readers. So you better have a second and third choice. And by virtue of the authority granted in me by absolutely nobody, I have to pick. And I go back, and people who've read major roles before are often assigned, hopefully of their own prerogative, roles of more minor. But there are no minor roles in theater. Everything is a stitch in a web that holds the whole arc of narrative together. And I think one of the common phrases, there are no small roles, only small actors.
Indeed.
And it's true for reading, too. Unlike an audience member in a play, where you're just listening, here you have your eyes engaged with the text. And you're sitting among people you know, that you're friends. So there's a social web and context operating, too, among your friends or wannabe friends. So you're both an actor for that one moment, and second, you're a reader. Now you're sharing this engagement with others, and that's an experience that I think is much deeper and brings its own kind of richness, where you understand the text and the operations, I think, in a much more organic and sensible way. Not that going to a theater isn't wonderful. It's a different experience.
Well, tell me about your background.
I'm just an old broken-down research engineer. I have no theater background. My aspirations are delusional. I understand that. But I love the fact that we have an opportunity in Shakespeare to read the gift of an extraordinary mind that might come along once in a millennium, that can occupy the perspectives and points of view of essentially all of humanity, and then put it in the corpus of a literature that we in turn can discover for ourselves and identify those things perhaps lost to us and discovered in these kinds of theater reading opportunities. So I just find that just another aspect of trying to figure out who we are.
A few participants, like John Tomlinson and his wife Barbara Clark, have backgrounds in theater.
I teach at the Mendocino College Lake Center in Lakeport. Teach theater, film, and speech there. I teach at the Woodland Community College campus as well. That's over in Clear Lake. Shakespeare is the first play I was in. I was in Much Ado About Nothing many years ago. And now I've piloted a program out there in Lake County that is going into its 8th year, and we do an open, free performance in the public parks there in Lakeport and in Clear Lake. This year we got Measure for Measure going on. It goes on every year that we've been outside. You know, we had to go online for a couple of years, sadly. But every year it goes on the last weekend of July and the first weekend of August. And so if some people are looking for more information, we call it Shakespeare at the Lake. It's through Mendocino College and the Lake County Theater Company. In my personal experience in Shakespeare and the things that draw me to it have always been comedy and having a lot of fun. And so this is definitely a kind of a bit of a departure from that, and it's so rough and so bloody. I have been involved in Hamlet and done Romeo and Juliet, and yet both of those, as tragic as they are, there's so much comedy to explore in those scripts that this is a lot darker.
Yeah.
Then again, I went online to get prepared and saw a production of it, and it was produced by PBS pretty recently. I saw people in masks in the audience, so making me think it was post-COVID kind of comeback play, and they tell you what, they really worked the comedy. That version of Richard. Did you look at that too?
No, I didn't, but I've read that he's so evil that you can make it comic.
It really worked. It really worked, and it's just a pursuit of these goals without like a deference to like the implicit tragedy or being mean. Like nobody's looking sideways. They're just like, no, this is the ruthless world we're in, and I have every right to what I'm after. Like these are psychologically rich characters, and we can go there with it, and exploring those in a more subtle way is also rewarding. But to see it like that, I thought was pretty cool.
Are you going to go for that today?
I don't know what I'll be going for yet today. But a little bit, though. A little bit. You know, it's very complex. But that was a very influential take on it, what I watched on it. And just what they really enhanced was the big switch from like where he started and making all these alliances, and then just ruthlessness, you know, and this reflection of getting to the top at any cost kind of mentality.
My name is Barbara Clark. I am the executive director of the Lake County Arts Council, and I'm on the board for the Lake County Theater Company, and I perform and I sing, and I do Shakespeare at the Lake. I'm also a costumer, so I do the costumes for a lot of shows. So.
You're totally a theater person.
Yeah, that's pretty much my life.
What role are you with?
I am playing the very fun role of Queen Margaret the Cursed. Yes.
Great. Are you going to emote big time?
I'm going to try to do so appropriately. It's fun. She has a lot of fun stuff she gets to say, so.
Yeah. And now, are you part of this circle? Do you come every time?
No, this is our second time. I'm John's wife, so we came together for Taming of the Shrew.
Are you very familiar with Shakespeare?
I'm pretty familiar. Even when I'm not doing the shows because of Shakespeare at the Lake, I'm participating in the summer every year. And the more that we do, the more we study. John and I are always learning about like what shows might be next.
Mm-hmm. Tell me why you've gravitated towards theater, why it's so important in your life.
Oh, that's easy. For me, theater's family. Theater is a place where everyone's accepted, regardless of physical appearance, outward influence, things that, you know, introverted, extroverted, there's a place for everyone. Technical people, backstage people. And when you work with people that closely that much, you create families, and that's just huge.
Here are John and Barbara in their Richard III roles.
Now is the winter of our discontents made glorious summer by this son of York, and all the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Now are our brows bound up with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarums changed to merry meetings, our dreadful marches to delightful measures. Grim-visaged war hath smoothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. But I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking-glass, I, that am rudely stamped, and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I, that am curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world, scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. Why, I, in this weak piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to see my shadow in the sun, and descant on mine own deformity. And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain, and hate the idle pleasure of these days. Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous by drunken prophecies, libels, and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate, the one against the other. And if King Edward be as true and just as I am subtle, false, and treacherous, this day should Clarence closely be mewed up about a prophecy which says that G of Edward's heirs the murderer shall be. Dive thoughts down to my soul.
Thou elvish-marked, abortive, rooting hog, that thou hast sealed in thy nativity the slave of nature and the son of hell. Thou slanderer of thy heavy mother's womb, thou loathed issue of thy father's loins, thou rag of honor, thou detested...
Margaret!
Richard!
Huh?
I call thee not.
I cry thee mercy then, for I did think thou hadst called me all these bitter names.
Why, so I did, but looked for no reply. Oh, let me make the period to my curse.
'Tis done by me, and ends in Margaret.
Thus have you breathed your curse against yourself.
Some, like Claire Zwirling, have found their inner theater personas through these readings.
I came originally because my husband was interested, and I tend to be rather introverted and never saw myself as reading out loud. However, my mother's spirit came through me with the first reading. My mother was an actress and a newscaster, and I found that I loved it. I'm playing the character of the Duchess, which the mother of Richard III, as well as Edward and Clarence.
I have bewept a worthy husband's death, and lived with looking on his images. But now two mirrors of his princely semblance are cracked in pieces by malignant death, and I, for comfort, have but one false glass that grieves me when I see my shame in him. Thou art a widow, yet thou art a mother, and hast the comfort of thy children left. But death has snatched my husband from mine arms, and plucked two crutches from my feeble hands, Clarence and Edward. Oh, what cause have I, thine being but a moiety of my moan, to overgo thy woes and drown thy cries?
For more information or to explore your own acting chops without having to memorize lines or blocking, contact Mike Issel by emailing mike@thelogicworks.com. Thanks to Mike, Leona Walden, Toby Wade, and all the readers for their hospitality. For Art Waves, I'm Marty Derlin.